November 16, 1941, dawn hangs low over the inland sea of Japan. A pale mist drifts across the water, clinging to the mountains around Kure like a held breath. I imagine standing on the shore, watching workers fall silent as something immense begins to move. The water itself seems to recoil. Steel groans, tugboats strain, and slowly, almost reluctantly, the largest battleship ever built slides free from the dock. No music plays. No cheers erupt. This is not celebration. This is reverence. Everyone present understands they are witnessing more than a warship. They are watching a nation's soul take physical form. At the bow, catching the weak morning light, a massive golden chrysanthemum crest gleams. 6 feet across, sacred, imperial. Its reflection ripples across the water, distorted, trembling. The name painted nearby is just as heavy with meaning Yamato. Not merely a name, but a poetic synonym for Japan itself. To lose this ship would be to wound the spirit of the empire. To deploy it would be to stake everything. I have spent years studying weapons of war, but some machines demand a different tone. Yamato was not built to fight a battle. She was built to end all battles. At first, Yamato existed only as a whisper. Even within the Imperial Japanese Navy, only a handful of officers knew her true scale. Blueprints were locked away. Construction workers were sworn to secrecy, forbidden from discussing what they saw even with family. Fishing boats were banned from the surrounding waters. From the air, camouflage nets hid the growing hull like a sleeping giant beneath leaves. Japan understood something fundamental. If the world learned what was taking shape in Kure, the balance of naval power would shift before the ship ever fired a shot. The mystery was intentional. Yamato was Japan's answer to a problem that had haunted naval planners since the end of the First World War. Japan knew it could never match the industrial output of the United States. Ship for ship, gun for gun, America would always build more. So Japanese doctrine took a different path. If they could not win by numbers, they would win by supremacy. One decisive battle. One overwhelming blow. A single ship. Or class of ships. So powerful that enemy fleets would break before it. Yamato was conceived as the ultimate expression of that philosophy. I often think about the mindset of the engineers who drew her first lines. They were not simply designing a vessel, they were bending physics to national will. The result was staggering. Yamato's hull stretched 863 feet long, longer than nearly anything afloat at the time. Fully loaded, she displaced roughly 70,000 tons, more than 20% heavier than the largest Allied battleships. She was so vast that no Japanese dry dock could initially contain her. The dock at Kure had to be deepened, quietly, carefully, to avoid suspicion. Her width posed a problem of its own. A ship this broad should have been slow, lumbering, a floating fortress incapable of maneuver. But Yamato's designers refused compromise. They tested more than 50 wax hull models, obsessing over hydrodynamics. The answer came in the form of a bulbous bow, jutting forward like a submerged fist. It generated its own wave, canceling resistance from the hull. The effect was revolutionary. Despite her size, Yamato could reach nearly 28 knots, about 32 miles per hour, an extraordinary speed for such mass. Driving her forward were 4 steam turbine engines producing a combined 150,000 horsepower. 12 boilers heated steam to 700 degrees Fahrenheit, feeding turbines that turned massive propellers. Each propeller blade was nearly 3 times the height of an average man. At full speed, Yamato burned 70 tons of fuel oil per hour. Every mile she sailed was a calculated expense of empire. But it was her guns that truly set Yamato apart. I have stood beside preserved naval artillery in museums across the world, but nothing compares to imagining Yamato's main batteries alive and loaded. 9 guns, mounted in 3 colossal turrets. Each barrel measured 18.1 inches in diameter, the largest naval guns ever fitted to a warship. Each armor-piercing shell weighed over 3,000 pounds, as heavy as a small car. When fired, a single shell could travel 25 miles, arcing over the horizon, invisible until impact. The recoil alone was enough to shove the entire ship sideways in the water. Loading one of these guns took at least 40 seconds. an eternity in combat. But when they spoke with the voice of gods. The irony, of course, is almost cruel. These guns were designed to obliterate enemy battleships in a decisive surface duel. And yet, Yamato would never fight such a battle. She would never meet an American battleship gun to gun. Below the main batteries, Yamato bristled with secondary armament. 6-inch guns capable of reaching 17 miles. 24 5-inch guns mounted in 12 turrets, able to fire faster and track smaller targets. And as the war progressed and air power began to dominate, Yamato's decks filled with anti-aircraft weapons. From an initial 24 machine guns in 1941, she grew to carry over 150 by April 1945. Triple-mounted, hastily installed, manned by exposed crews firing skyward as fast as human hands could feed ammunition. Yet even this forest of guns could not solve the fundamental problem Yamato faced. She was built for a war that no longer existed. Operationally, Yamato spent much of her early life in port. She was too valuable to risk, too symbolic to lose. For a time, she served as the flagship of the combined fleet, hosting Japan's highest naval commanders. Her living conditions reflected that status. Unlike cramped destroyers where sailors slept almost stacked atop one another, Yamato offered space. 10 square feet per man. She had air conditioning, unheard of in most Japanese warships. Her crew of nearly 2,800 ate white rice instead of barley. Comfort by wartime standards bred pride. Serving aboard Yamato was an honor few would ever forget. But pride does not stop bombs. When Yamato finally sailed into combat, it was not as her designers envisioned. At the Battle of the Sibian Sea and later off Samar, during the Battle of Lake Gulf, she fired her guns not at enemy battleships but at escort carriers and destroyers. She managed to sink an American escort carrier and a destroyer. Impressive, but strategically meaningless. Meanwhile, American aircraft swarmed overhead, striking again and again, proving that the age of the battleship was ending in fire from the sky. I have read survivor accounts that speak of the psychological toll. The sound of aircraft engines overhead became a kind of dread heartbeat. Even surrounded by steel armor up to 25 inches thick, men felt naked. Yamato's armor was legendary. 23,000 tons of hardened steel, more than 30% of her total weight. Her sides could theoretically withstand shells like her own, but no armor could fully protect against coordinated aerial torpedo attacks. Her designers had included flood control systems. 150 watertight compartments, pumps capable of shifting fuel and water to counteract damage. These systems worked, at first. During her final mission, when torpedoes struck her port side, and she listed 15 degrees, the crew managed to reduce the tilt to 5. But damage accumulated faster than solutions. Once the starboard compartments were filled, there was nowhere left to compensate. April 7, 1945. Operation 10, Go. This was Yamato's final voyage, and from the beginning, it was a mission without return. She was sent toward Okinawa with barely enough fuel to reach the island, ordered to beach herself and fight as a stationary battery. The logic was desperation masquerading as strategy. I imagine the crew knew. Sailors are not fools. They would have felt it in the silence, in the way officers avoided certain words. American reconnaissance spotted Yamato early. Waves of aircraft followed, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, fighters. The sky itself seemed to turn hostile. Yamato's anti-aircraft guns roared, filling the air with tracers, but planes kept coming. Torpedo after torpedo slammed into her hull, mostly at the bow and stern where armor was thinner. Bombs punched through decks. Fire spread. Smoke obscured the sun. By mid-afternoon, Yamato was mortally wounded. She slowed, she listed. Orders to abandon ship came too late for many. At 20:23 p.m., as internal fires reached her magazines, Yamato exploded. The blast was so massive it was seen from miles away, a mushroom of smoke and flame rising into the sky. Of her crew, over 3,000 died. Fewer than 300 survived. When I reflect on Yamato's legacy, I do not see failure. I see transformation. She was the pinnacle of battleship design, and its tombstone. She proved definitively that no amount of steel, no caliber of gun, could dominate a sky ruled by aircraft. Even the most invincible battleship ever conceived could be stopped from above. Yamato was built to win any war. Instead, she taught the world how wars would be won from then on.